in this episode of Wall Street Wars.
This is Tim, veteran heavy infantry of the Texan Army. In the days leading up to the weekend of June 21st, 2025, the world was on fire. For decades, the global fear of a hot war between Israel and Iran had been a nightmare scenario, one that had only existed in fiction. But in the middle of June, this hot war became a reality. While on its surface, this conflict should have spelled doom for global stock markets. In reality, it saw a steady and almost linear decline in the American exchanges. Nothing too precipitous. In fact, if you look at the daily chart of the S&P 500, you can see a very subtle and even stepwise move downwards. All this while headlines such as hypersonic missiles rocking Tel Aviv and retaliatory strikes landing in Iran kept the world on edge. Perhaps the stock market was waiting for a trigger to send stocks plummeting into chaos. Well, as if almost on theatrical cue, the United States had now threatened to become involved in the conflict. Add to that equation a volatile American leader, as well as a fear of another never-ending war in the Middle East, and you had all the makings of a stock market crash. It is with this global backdrop that the commander took a rather unconventional position. Chamel Raghu, the man whom some have been calling the Conqueror of Wall Street, has been known for some rather unorthodox positions. ChameltheCow, they call him. Well, the cow could be in for a slaughter this time. I mean, why take any position at the onset of World War III? And mind you, the position he was about to take was not a light one. It was one that would involve a good portion of the Texan Cavalry, who handle futures contracts, as well as 2 legions of our infantry, who handle stocks. And what was the commander going to do with this giant army? Short the market? To us, this sounded like the obvious bet. Well, we didn't have to wait long to find out. On Friday, June 20th, Chamel would summon the cavalry and 2 legions of the army into battle. And the direction? Long, with shock, disbelief, anxiety, fear, and you name it. Even the hardened among us were second-guessing the commander's decision. First off, why would anyone want to be involved at the beginning of World War III? Secondly, why deploy a good chunk of our cavalry? These were the best of our best. And 3, we're seriously going to go long? Well, apparently, according to the commander, this was the course of action, and this was the right time. So we would take a long position across both the cavalry and the infantry on Friday, June 20th, 2025. The commander himself leading the cavalry, and the bots executing the orders through the infantry on the stocks. Our entry point on the S&P 500 mini futures contract was 6,038.25 at 10:24 a.m. Eastern. This was approximately 596.50 on the SPY ETF. How long were we going to be long? No one knew. All while the world was burning. All while the United States was saying that it might enter the war. All while the world was waiting for a potential nuclear conflict. To me, this sounded like a really foolish bet, and I had no desire on stepping into battle under these circumstances. But my desires don't matter. Only the direction from the commander and the Momentumcoil. And with this, we would march and gallop into war. After taking the position on Friday, a sinking feeling spread across the army. True to form of late, the market would seem to take a stepwise move downward with highs in the 599s and finishing near the low of the day around 594. This nearly 1% swing downward not only bludgeoned some of our troops, but left the entire army feeling defeated. We were long, and we didn't know why. Plus, we didn't know how long we would be in this position. All we knew was we were entering this weekend with the threat of nuclear war over our heads, and that the market could open precipitously down on Monday if something were to happen. This meant our army could be decimated by Monday morning. We were going to have a nice weekend indeed. As is the norm when engaged, we soldiers find things hard to recall when markets close. Our bodies freeze, our minds shut down, our existence comes to a complete halt in the cosmos. We only know about what is passed by our brothers in the army who are not engaged. We would hear that the commander himself would not be biting his nails over the position. No, we heard he headed to the Texas coast to enjoy the ocean. How nice of him to seek paradise amidst nuclear Armageddon. But all would not be mentally peaceful for Chamel, because on Saturday the announcement that the U.S. has bombed nuclear facilities in Iran swept through global news media like a whip cracks through the air. A sudden and decisive involvement of the United States was truly an escalation, and one that my infantry brothers said felt like it would lead to a market meltdown come Monday. And so, while the cavalry and infantry remained engaged in their long position over the weekend, the commander was touring Texas beaches, perhaps for solitude, perhaps to pray to the gods. It could also be just his reverence for water. Heck, they say his trademark blue suit is a tribute to water. Well, for whatever reason it may be, we do know that come Sunday evening, the futures markets would open lower and hit near 591 on the SPY. This sharp drop was what the Army would wake from our slumber to. Here we go. This is the cliff we've been waiting for. We were all ready for the worst. But as the evening progressed, we saw a steady rise. 591, 592, 593, and rising. What was happening here? The market seemed to be slowly but surely gobbling sellers up. 594 to 595, slowly but surely. Our commander, back from his ocean visit, had now readily been eyeing the pre-market. And so, with some glimmers of hope, we prepared ourselves for the market open. Our army held on tight through the night. A steady rise continued until the market opened, and like some sort of magic, we were almost even. On Monday, June 23rd, with the SPY opening near 595, we see our position nearly flat, and we all pinch ourselves. Wasn't the world about to come to an end? Well, it seems like market participants were pleased that the supposed bombings by the U.S. on Iran's nuclear sites was not a segue into a new war in the Middle East, but were a one-and-done operation as voiced by America's leader. Not only this, but it seemed like Iran was not looking to push that giant flashing red button, and the region was still together. The market must have loved this, because the broader market went on a nearly one-way trip upwards. 597, 598, 599, and higher. While there would be a pretty steep dip during the early part of the day, the market would then rocket higher until the close, ending at 602.55. A nearly 1% gain for our army on paper. This would equate to approximately $3,000 per futures contract. Multiply that by our possible cavalry capacity of 327, and you get the picture. And while this seems like a heck of a move, we would learn that we were not exiting with this profit today. No, we were holding this position overnight and beyond. All throughout the day, we incredulous soldiers would search for a glimpse of the commander's face as the market kept racing higher. Some say they saw him smile. Others said his face simply looked pleased. As the day came to a close, we realized thousands more soldiers and cavalry had joined our cause. The Texan army had come out of the weekend not only alive, but now swelling with more troops. While the trading day of Monday, June 23rd, would mark a decidedly different tone for the army and for the broader markets, we weren't exactly sure why we were still long. What did the commander know that we didn't? Why would the Momentumcoil continue this position? These are all things we soldiers do not get the luxury of knowing, and so our position continued. Day after day, the market seemed to float higher. A swell of enthusiasm was carrying our army upwards and further into the green. Talks of a ceasefire in the works between Israel and Iran had even the most pessimistic wanting to cheer. Whether pre-market, during the market hours, or aftermarket, this week was a dreamlike scenario for long holders. It was as if any downside pressure was muted, and as if our army could do no wrong. Higher and higher the market rose, 600 to 605, then 605 through 610. It seemed as the week went on, the strength of the upward move would continue. Like a giant wave, this market move would build upon the strength of the geopolitical events and cause a market rally that would sustain all the way through Friday's close. As each day passed, we would remark on how afraid we were going into the position last week, and now how obvious it was to be long. What a difference a week makes. And so, right at the close of Friday market, we unload our futures contracts and broader market stock positions at 6,224.50 or roughly 614.75 on the SPY. Little did we know it, but we were exiting at all-time market highs. This trade would mark one of the commander's highest grossing SPY trades in terms of points gained. A total of over 1,800 points on the SPY, or almost 3% profit on this multi-day hold. This gain equates to $9,000 per contract. And if my math serves me correctly, if our max cavalry capacity is 327 contracts max equals $2,943,000. This does not factor the stock positions taken as well, the infantry gains. So the Texan army could have netted upwards of $3 million on one trade lasting about 8 days. Not bad for the end of the world, am I right? Going from the end of the world to fresh all-time highs on Wall Street. How did the commander see this coming? He has been called a pattern recognition genius by some. But were there really any patterns over the past few weeks which could predict this? Or how did the Momentumcoil know to take this 8-day position as the world was heading into World War III? The Momentumcoil, the financial superweapon invented by Chamel Raghu, has been known to make some historic trades. The automated ability of the invention has been a tightly held secret, and if it can make multi-week calls going from World War III to new all-time highs, what can it do? So as far as this Israel-Iran trade, we do not know exactly how it came about. What we do know is that while millions, if not billions of market participants were expecting the worst, including our army, it was only by the commander's guidance that we saw a wartime scenario blossom into fresh all-time highs. A peace profiteer, not your regular wartime guy, but then again, nothing is quite regular about the commander. Could we chalk it up to the commander being an optimist? Well, if that's the case, how do we explain the countless successful short positions Chamel has taken over the years? Maybe the biggest question is, how did he know that Iran's response would be measured? Maybe it was just a lucky guess. Whatever it was, Chamel wagered a good portion of our cavalry and infantry to find out. There seemed to be no fundamental reasons for anyone to be long in the market on the week of June 16th, 2025, but nonetheless, we were. With thousands of new troops, the Texan army has expanded. Our faith in the commander has grown, and so have the mysteries of the Momentumcoil. The man who was once called the Conqueror of Volatility, thanks to his performance during the market turmoil of 2018, is now being called ChameltheCow. The Conqueror of Wallstreet, indeed, did not get slaughtered on this day. These are the events I can recall from the week of June 16th, up until Friday, June 27th, 2025. While the Army was more than pleased with the results of this last battle, we hope global conditions are different when we're next called into battle. This is Tim, veteran heavy infantry of the Texan Army. And until next time, this is Wall Street Wars.